Another episode of Let's Talk Money with Friends. Every Wednesday, we have the opportunity to come to you to talk about money, life, and everything else. And this is the last Wednesday of the year. I am so excited because I've been able to enjoy 2023 and I cannot wait for 2024. So I already posted on our post that Happy New Year 2024. So of course, because it's the new year, we want to have fun. And I spoke to several of my friends who are on the show tonight. We wanted to have a great conversation about the movie. It's a Wonderful Life. You matter. And the reason I wanted to have this conversation is because, throughout the year, we talk about, legacy matters. We talk about planning matters. Recently, we talk about mistakes matters. A mistake matter. We've talked about so many different topics, trying to holistically help you understand how to manage your finances and your life. Of course, we say money encompasses everything. But tonight, we want to talk about this movie because I feel like it definitely a synopsis. All the lessons in that movie is a synopsis of what we've been talking about. And we want to draw parallels and really share some insights because I do believe that every one of us here, we've seen it several times already this year. We have a lot to share. So without further ado, I just want to again thank you for coming. Thank you for supporting throughout the year. And please tag, share, make a comment. Let your friends know that we are here tonight. And please share so that they can participate and be part of this great conversation. If you're not able to watch tonight, watch another night. But please participate and let people know that we are here because we know that we're doing something that's timely and relevant. So without further ado, I would like to welcome my very first friend who's on. She's been on many times before, and that's Gabrielle. Her and I share a similar name. Gabrielle, please say hello, and then we'll have Curtis come on to say hello, and then we're going to dive in because to me, it's a wonderful life. You matter.
Hi, I'm Gabrielle. I used to be a high school science teacher. Now I'm a screenwriter, and I'm excited to talk about this movie as a screenwriter. And I think this is one of the great movies of all time.
I know. Curtis, when I called you and I said, Curtis, do you want to be part of this discussion? Curtis said, how is it going to be money related to? I said, Curtis, everything we talk about has money undertone. So yes, we're going to talk about that tonight. Curtis, say hello.
Hello, everyone, and I am Curtis Chambers, and I am an AFC certified financial counselor. I deal in trauma-informed financial wellness, and so I offer it to individuals in the community and also as an employee benefit to employees. And I'm glad to do it.
Nice.
Yeah, Curtis is doing a great job. So when we called and I was talking to Gabrielle, she's like, yes, I've seen this movie a million times. And of course, Curtis said the same thing. So yeah, the very first question, again, money encompasses everything. And the idea of this movie, it's a wonderful life. And I added the you matter. So when was the last time you've seen this movie, Curtis? How many times have you seen it? And what is one thing that you saw that kind of, as a financial advisor, as a father, as a community member, one thing that you remember that really impacted you the most?
It's funny, if you go now or later on, you really start to see a lot of references that people use in other areas. I mean, you can see it in our other Gabrielle that she's in the industry. So you'll notice even other films, and it's films that you wouldn't even think are in the same space. For instance, Back to the Future 2. There's a scene where Marty McFly, I think Robert Zemeckis might have taken it shot for shot. Marty looking around town, why me? That type of thing. So yeah, it's just a real influential movie, and at that point it was 40 years later, but now even 70, 80 years later.
Yeah, I've seen this movie so many times. And for those of you who haven't seen it, since you are the film, entertainment person, Gabrielle, why don't you give us a quick synopsis and then or maybe highlight one of the parts of the movie that really impacted you the most, and then I'll share mine.
Okay, well, the movie is about this guy I think it was 1946, the movie was made, a guy named George Bailey, and his father runs a building and loans company, a little small bank, a very modest bank in a little town. And George Bailey doesn't want to stay in the town. He wants to travel, and he thinks he has more important things to do. But his father has a stroke and passes away, and different things happen, and he's forced to stay in the town and take over his father's business. And there's a guy named Potter, Mr. Potter, who he's a loan shark, and he has a lot of tenants. He has a lot of apartments, and he gouges people, and he's trying to take over, get control of this little savings and loan. He doesn't want people to have mortgages and savings and all that. And he tries to lure George Bailey into his business, bribing him with a good salary and whatnot.
Yeah.
And George Bailey, of course, well, spoiler alert, if you don't want to know the whole movie, then you don't.
Yeah, no, I was thinking though in terms of like what's one, because for me, like I thought about, on the show we talk about relationship matters. His dynamic, George, the main character, his relationship with the two ladies that he had, in addition to his family. I talk about like community leadership, community engagement.
Yeah, he becomes.
His parents were very engaged.
He gets married, and he doesn't think he's important, and then he starts having money problems, and he gets to the point where he's almost suicidal, and then an angel named Clarence, who's trying to earn his wings, comes and shows him what his life would have been like had he not been, or what the town would be like had he not been alive. And of course, it's much worse, and it's called Pottersville after the evil Mr. Potter. And he comes out of that experience with a renewed sense of
you matter, understand
his life matters, and that he's made a huge impact in his community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But before he gets to that point, because I'm always looking for parallels now in my work, he has, in my opinion, feels like he was drawn into this world. You talked about the father's stroke. Sometimes there's guilt. People, why we do certain things. I don't want to do the family business. We were watching the show earlier, my wife and I, and the same type of thing. Like you get compelled, and there's a lot of cultures, religions, or what have you, where they don't force you, but they force you, and so you feel compelled. And I think that he was like, this ain't my life, or at least they don't want it to be his life. The brother was going to help, or the brother goes off with his wife and lives his life. These type of things happen. And so now you think, oh, well, I have to do this, or else mom's going to be disappointed, or this one's going to be let down. And so you'll see that theme a lot in movies as well, where it's just like I was put upon, and now I'm not living the life that I want. This is humdrum, this is mundane, or whatever. And so that type of thing is happening now as well as with him.
Correct. I had this question as to, last week we talked about planning. And like how you plan for your life, right? And this young man, George, from the time he was a child, the very beginning of the movie was a scene about him talking about how he cannot wait to go and explore, right? Go out there and, like you said, Curtis, go out there and be an explorer and be a traveler, a world traveler. He couldn't wait to get out of his small community, and yet he ended up staying. It ended up having to stay. So do you have, Gabriel or Curtis, can you think of any dreams that you had as a youngster and you realize now at the age you are now right now that you were not able to accomplish it? Part of it perhaps, Curtis, was because you had obligation towards family members, or maybe some financial setbacks, or anything that could have kept you from being able to venture off. I have my own story. Gabriel or Curtis, you can go first, Gabriel.
I definitely don't want to eat the space since I just spoke, but if you don't have anything, Gabriel, I can go. Okay. It's not in the form of like a regret, but I know that I was good in baseball. I know that they could have, done some things, but I also noticed, I've noticed now, not only in my family or my life, my community, clients as well, that these things cost money, whether it's an only child or you're family of 6 or 7, if you like hockey, if you like gymnastics, if you like, I mean, these things cost real money. That's churn, not just in your terms of your time, right? Because if you got to get 5 a.m., you're not working that other job, or maybe getting these promotions and that upward mobility, and never mind the actual cost of the activity itself. So there's things like that that I would say, man, I would really love to help and change people's trajectories. So I can help you with your finances and stay out of some of these pitfalls. At least you can make a decision not based on finances, that you can say, we're going to pursue this, or you want to be an architect, let me send you to this school or this, mentorship. But sometimes that's what happened with me, is like, you know what, if I had more time to go to these certain camps and be in other parts of the state where the weather is great, or the country rather, that's part of it as well. So yeah, there's some things that held me back.
Yeah, the financial setback, big time. Because the very first reason, the first time he was ready to leave, his dad was still alive and okay. The first time he couldn't go because there wasn't money. They had not been proper. Father has a good heart, had a good heart, loved community, but he had not saved enough money to help him go to college. So he ended up staying behind for 4 years to work. I know for me, when I was ready to go to college, I had gone to NYU, wanted to go to NYU and also another university in Maine that I had gone, spent a week there, really wanted to go and attend those universities, but money and other family challenges, reality hit real hard, really quickly after spending a week. Actually, in Maine, I was there for a week and I realized that most of those kids, their parents were very affluent. I was gonna need so much more than just tuition in order for me to navigate through that system. And I decided, you know what, I wasn't equipped. I didn't have it. And you know what, even today, I always think that had I gone, maybe my life would have been different. Like I would have had different relationships, met different people, and perhaps, so, throughout the movie, you have this man, George Bailey, thinking about the fact that he missed out on opportunities. What about you, Gabriel? I know you're a teacher and now you are a film person. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of why this movie it resonates with people so much, because it's the everyman story. It's something people can really relate to. As for me, when I was a kid, I wrote lots of little books and illustrated them. I like to draw and to write. And but I also like nature, so I went on to study biology. I became a science teacher, which I enjoyed very much. But now that I've finished with teaching, I've gone back to writing, and I'm doing screenwriting. They say whatever you loved doing when you were 9. Oh, sorry, that's the doorbell. Whatever you loved doing when you were 9, you should keep doing it as you get older.
You think so? Yeah, but again, the setbacks you had mentioned, Curtis, financial, this show is about money. We are about finance. And I think about the setbacks you mentioned. I just mentioned that he had setbacks because of the fact that he didn't have the finances at first to go to college. But when he finally got the money, his dad had a heart attack, right? And died. And then when he thought, I'm going to work for 4 years, wait for my brother to come back so he can take over so I could go ahead and go live my life the way I've been imagining it since I was 9 years old. He got stuck again because guess what? You can plan for yourself, but you cannot plan for somebody else, right? Right, Curtis? He was planning for his dad and his brother, but he cannot plan. So do you also think that you had just mentioned, do you also think that the reason why he couldn't leave because he had became his dad in terms of like that caring person, that compassionate person who couldn't see other people not have, because dad had made sacrifices to stay in the community?
I'm telling you that character resonates with folks because he's such a human, relatable character. George conflicted, he's at different times confused, insecure, uncertain, but a good person. And like you said, so he takes after and says, you know what, I'm gonna have to do this. And kind of like pushes your own wants and desires, and that 9-year-old child, whatever that was getting put to the side. And yeah, he's done some stuff that probably was not great, but I just think his relatability and a lot of redeeming qualities. I mean, look at you're talking about something 80 years later, and there's some other movies that we probably could likewise talk about, but this one just seems like it still resonates, and even more so now post, what just happened a few years ago with COVID. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it just relates even more. So I got a couple of things I want to say about him, but I'm gonna wait a few minutes.
Yeah, Gabriel, do you think sometimes you need to be a little selfish? Because I think he had became his dad. And I kept saying, I'm watching the movie. Every time I watch, I'm like, how come he didn't just like many times, even in the movie, they say, you go, George, you go. And yet he's standing there. He almost like became paralyzed, like he couldn't leave. Like, George, go ahead, go. And he's like standing there, listening to more issues, listening to more problems, trying to take in what's going on in his community. And I think the more you take in, the more involved you become, and somewhat the more sacrificial you become, sacrificing your own so that you can help other people. You think you need to be a little selfish sometimes, Gabrielle?
Well, I think you have to find a balance.
Yeah.
I think you shouldn't be too selfish and
Yeah.
you shouldn't be too giving. You have to
Yeah.
play it by ear. Maybe George Bailey in the movie sacrificed too much, but in the end, he realized that he was happy with his life and what he had done with it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But
There's the balance.
the balance, yeah, because otherwise you can become resentful, and he was kind of resentful
Yeah.
It's
until
odd
he had
because
his awakening.
yeah, I mean, sometimes folks, the selfish is the term that kind of like weird. What do I do with that? But you do have to take care of yourself, right? You've been on an airplane, the old adage, you got to put that oxygen mask on you because if I'm no good, I always think of when I'm flying with my daughter, and then my son, they can't fend for themselves. So I'm taking care of myself, whereas you usually would think, oh, let's run and make sure they're good. But if I pass out, then who's going to fend for the 3-year-old or the 4-year-old? So I'm taking care of myself in that sense. So if it's selfish, you want to use that term, I won't fight you. But it's more, I got to make sure that I'm good. And then, because if I'm not good mentally, physically, whatever the LY you want to use, then it's going to be tough, to be able
Yeah.
to help out.
Yeah, the reason I think it's important when I say I had read a book, I think it was about like why is it important to be a little selfish? And sometimes people take it as being negative, but you have to think of self every once in a while because I know someone who's from international, what do you call it, the immigrant community. We have folks who come to this country, and many. I was just saying that to a cousin of mine who just came here to a program that Biden had offered the community, and we have folks who come here and they said, you know what, they made promises to people back home. Like, I'm gonna come here, I'm gonna work so hard to make sure that you have a better life back home. And they have made such a commitment that they come here and they basically stop living for themselves, stop creating a life for themselves because they're working on behalf of everybody else back home. And 30 years, 40 years later, they become resentful because they were too righteous. Actually, a
Yeah.
friend of my, a Christian friend of mine said that we all ought to be, we have to balance it. You cannot be too righteous. So throughout the movie, I kept saying, yes, at the end of the story, like, you see that it was okay. He ended up being happy, but you can be too righteous, right?
Yeah, it happens, and it's funny that I'm so glad that you shared that piece, because you're talking about people who emigrate here. A lot of my clients, they come from various backgrounds and socioeconomic locations and such. But for many of my Black and persons of color, whether it's I'm the first person to go to college or I'm the first person to be deemed as quote unquote successful, a lot of people who may hear this right now or earlier on, if they're 30s, 40s, 50s, they'll remember Terry and Miles. Those are two characters in Soul Food. Soul Food was a movie, late 90s or what have you. And anytime there was trouble, they would go to Terry and Miles. They were the brother and the wife who kind of made it. You know what I'm saying? So they weren't even like uber millionaires. It was just like the equivalent of being an attorney, an executive. So you could go to them whenever things got tough, but they didn't realize they have issues too because they weren't independently wealthy. So when they had issues and you went to them, then the family secrets start coming out and you start seeing those dynamics and such. So there's a lot of pressure when it's people of color to say, I'm going to turn around and help. And you're not too far off from being in that same exact position. So the pressure is there. Either you're going to be looked at as, phony, mommy went outside, she'll be right back. Sorry. Either going to be looked at as a sellout or you've changed or what have you. And it's like, no, there, but the grace of God go I. So I can't, just give because I'm trying to take care of my tomorrows.
Yeah.
That's where it goes into the stuff that we talk about because a lot of us aren't thinking about the long-term horizon. It's just what's going on this weekend. And I know you got it, Gabrielle, because I saw you with that new earring. I saw you on that cruise. Why aren't you hooking me up? My rent's behind.
Exactly. Because last week we talked about giving matters. And as a believer, we've been taught, like ever since I was a child, my parents saying like you gotta give back to the church and your community, and it's okay. But you have to be very strategic. If you don't do that, you could give everything you've got. And then at the end of the day, you do become resentful and angry. And I remember soul food. Yes, I do. And the skeletons that will come out of the closet. And I think the same thing ended up happening with him to the point where he lost his mind for a minute because he's like, why did I stay here? Why didn't I get out? Why did I even have all these children? One of the things that I noticed that in the movie that because he was hoping to get out, he was hoping to leave. He didn't even start a life. I know people who don't start a life here because they're waiting to take care of everybody back home before they start a life. He didn't even want to start a life, but his mother got him to think about it. So there's so many parallels that we can draw here from our everyday life and today's life. We have a friend who was going to be on, and I guess she's on right now. So the next thing I wanted to talk about, I think is so important to share insights and also draw parallel. Do you think, because last week we talked about planning, but also we've done a show about purpose. Your purpose matters. Do you think so in talking about mistakes too, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about mistakes matters. So do you think that you cannot discover your real life purpose without obstacles and also without villains in your life? People like Mr. Potter, this man who became almost obsessed with destroying this young man because he wanted everything that he had. Do you think you can become the more, for example, there is this scripture that I love. It says, it was good for me to have been afflicted because I learned your statutes, meaning I learned the word of God and I learned who God is as a believer because I was afflicted, because I drew closer to him. Do you think it's important, Gabrielle? Have you gone through affliction and you felt like, had it not been for that, I wouldn't be the person that I am today?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I loved teaching for many years, but I got to a point where I was exhausted and burnt out and wasn't enjoying it anymore. And I had to move on. And I think as I've gotten a little older, I think I go towards what brings me joy. For example, there have been a few times you've asked me to be on your show, Gabrielle, and I didn't want to, but when you talked about, we're going to talk about It's a Wonderful Life, I was like, yeah, I want to talk about that. So I came on joyfully and I'm giving it my best. Whereas if I hadn't really been excited about the topic, I would have been, I would have been tense. So I think you have to go with your heart, go with your intuition a little bit.
Yeah, so when you have those difficult people who are in your life, because I know so many folks have had dreams, either when you think about the idea, you had give us a synopsis, the reason why George and his dad, have been so adamant about helping the community because they were the type of people who believed in housing justice. They wanted the community to have safe and habitable homes, right? They wanted them to have access to credit. We've done shows about credit matters, right? Curtis, I know you're big on that, teaching people how to build credit so that they can become independent and have access to other things. But here you are, the family, George's family, they wanted everybody to have what they had, a home, opportunities, right? So they're working hard towards helping the community, right? but unfortunately, Mr. Porter, who was the richest man and the meanest man in the town, did not want them to have that. So have you can you draw any parallel with some of the financial institutions that we have here in this country that has been, who have made it practically impossible for families to have opportunities in this country? And do you see them represented here by Mr. Porter, Harry Potter, Curtis?
I mean, there's too many systems that, when you start thinking about the banking systems, you start thinking, and it's not just the bank that won't lend you money straight, that in your face racism, when there were covenants in the paperwork that said, hey, you're not supposed to rent to anybody that's not, European or white. There's the blatant side, but then there's also people that are underbanked. I was driving by last evening and it said, I think 1% plus $1. So if you made like a $2,000 check and you go to a check cashier's, just think about how much money that is coming out plus the dollar. That's money that could be working for you. And mind if your ATM starts charging all these fees or what have you. So it's a lot that goes into it. And like I said, some is more covert and some's overt, but these are things that stop you from, getting ahead or being able to be mindful and planful. And I mean, if you couldn't read certain things, or, we talked about the voting polls before, when a rainy day like this or a colder day and there's only 2 machines. So who's going to stay in the long line in the rain? You're going to end up going home because kids got to get ready for school and for supper. So things like that, it didn't say, hey, you can't do this because you're purple skinned. No, it's saying you got to stand outside and wait. Whereas the other people had a million voting booths inside with hot cocoa and things of that nature. So there's a lot, Gabrielle, that goes into this. And that's important.
Yeah, so I'm watching this and I'm seeing Mr. Porter and I'm like, wow, the housing crisis that we have today. You have families who cannot afford to even afford an apartment, never mind buying a home. And if you notice one of the scenes of the movie, George Bailey is saying to Mr. Porter, are you kidding me? You want these families to wait forever until they're quote unquote save as all the money that they need to buy a home? No, they need credit. Their kids will be out of the house by the time they're able to afford a home, and then he had mentioned, like, that's after his dad had died. He said, when my father, there were times, especially this movie was done in 1946, that was just after the Great Depression. He said, you remember when you couldn't pay because you lost your job during hard times, my father did not foreclose on you. My father helped you, help the community stay intact. Sustainability is impossible when you have sharks like Mr. Porter, who doesn't care about community, doesn't care about family, and doesn't care about legacy. But you remember, Gabrielle, the reason he didn't care because he didn't have a family and he didn't have anything to really live for. So if I don't have it, I don't care for other people. But why was he so greedy? Barbara, thank you for joining us. Do you know why greed is such a situation, not only then, but also now? You cannot hear me? You're on mute. Okay, she's having a hard time. So yeah, can we talk a little bit about the greed factor? The greed that gets to impact communities, because at the end of the day on this show we talk about let's talk money with friends, and we say money encompasses everything. And sometimes you as a person could do everything right. To me, Judge did everything right, and a lot of the people in the community were working hard. They're doing everything right, and yet they had this villain who kept going after them, keep making it impossible for them to achieve what we would say a home ownership. That's the American dream. Why do you think some lenders and some institutions are so greedy and they refuse to let the families live and have a decent life? Do you have an idea, Gabrielle?
Well, it's called capitalism and greed. It's gotten even worse now, that the rich have gotten even richer and the poor have gotten even poorer, and it's getting harder and harder to buy a home. And it's just ridiculously expensive. It's so much higher than most people's wages.
Mhm.
So it's as timely now as, or even more so as it was back then. And
Absolutely.
and I think the story was partly George's own trajectory of, realizing his own worth, but the other theme of the story was, that community is more important than, money. And George was tempted. Mr. Bailey offered him a job with a better salary than what he was making, just to get him away from there so he could get control of his savings and loan, or whatever the bank was
For the
called.
community, right? Because
Yeah, and George chose to stay with his community and make less money, but serve his, the people who he was giving loans to and everything.
yeah,
And that's always the challenge, people are tempted by money, and
yeah. Even
It's,
as a
it's,
child, he used to say,
people aren't ones making the big bucks usually. I mean, sometimes they are, but
yeah,
it's crazy. The top 1% hold $38.7 trillion in wealth. So you're absolutely right. That's more than all the middle class, because the middle class has about 26% of the wealth, and we already know that the bottom 20 own about 3%. So just to have like 3 or 4 of the people that you could think of, and I don't like get into naming people, but the magnets that are out there right now with the electronic car companies, and the stuff gets delivered to our house every day. Those folks, they got, just about all of it. I think it's like 3, 4, 5 people, that own the
Can you hear
majority.
me now, Gabrielle?
yeah, I can. Yeah, the bloodsuckers
Yeah.
who are sucking the blood out of the community. And at the end of the day, home is such an important part. And that's why when I saw this movie, every single time, it's almost like as a believer, every time I read a scripture, it kind of brings new understanding. Every time I see this movie, it brings new understanding, the idea of home. You cannot build community without home. And when people are facing
Yeah.
housing insecurity and they're living in slum, what is it? You have a slumlord taking
Yeah.
advantage of people. You have banks who refuse to loan money to
No.
individual families, telling them to wait until your children are all grown. And there's no need for a house anymore
Absolutely.
because
I
there's
want
no
to say
need
one
for
thing too
community.
about that when you're done.
Say that again.
I said I wanted to add something else about that housing piece
No,
when you're
I
done.
want you to add. Go ahead, because you see families every day.
Absolutely, and this is where the rubber meets the road. I won't advise you what to do with your money in terms of buy this stock or that stock, but what I'm talking about, making purchases like that, the rule of thumb, so to speak, is, hey, 28 to 30% of your income should be going towards that housing or what have you. It wouldn't work here in Massachusetts. If you're trying to get a house, it's going to be about 50% of your income on average, statistically now. So can you imagine, 50 cents on every dollar going towards your home? I'm not even talking about lighting it up, warming it up, putting food in it. Just the domicile itself, 50% of your income, when the rule of thumb it should be 30%, really less.
Can
Yeah.
I say something,
Hold
Gabrielle?
on, Barbara. The American dream of homeownership. I know, Barbara, you are a mother with 3 young kids, and you have a grown family. Unlike you, there are so many young people who have decided not to have children, not to even start a family because they cannot afford it because of those porters who are out there in the system. So yes, please, and then please add to what I just mentioned here, Barbara.
Yes, regarding the question, hi everybody, my name is Barbara.
Yeah, hi, Barbara.
Regarding the greedy part of Mr. Porter earlier, so it's like the rich gonna get richer, and the poor, they're gonna get more power every day, because when you hold on to something and you get benefit and stuff like that, you don't wanna let it go. So you want more, you wanna add more.
Yeah.
What is your name again? Centris?
Curtis.
Curtis. And Curtis said that it's not easy to get a home in Massachusetts. It's like 50% of your income. And that is true. We have a home in Massachusetts, and every day my husband kid up, oh my goodness, if I known that house will take like 50, sometimes it's 50% on my income, I will have a second thought, because not even like electricity, gas, you know, when it's snowing like that, to pay people to help you with the snow and everything, it's more than 50%, I can say.
Yeah, the overall cost is so much more. And again, going back to community and us doing ourselves a disservice, because at the end of the day, just like at the end of the movie, the guardian angel, Clarence had an opportunity to show Bailey what life would have been like without him. I think we failed to understand that because of those potters that are out there, this population growth has suffered, right? Gabriel, people are not having children. They're not moving on in life. They're not, we have a whole generation of people who are without children, who are not getting married. I have young people in my family who are like, I cannot afford to pay my own rent, never mind buying a home. How am I going to take care of 2.5 kids? How is it 2.5 kids?
That's true.
How are we going to take care of that? Because again, the Baileys are looking at families. They're looking to help families. They're looking to build community. You remember even when he started building homes, when he was giving the keys, he would come, him and his wife, George Bailey, and give them bread, a loaf of bread, and I believe it was oil, right? Saying that may your house always be filled with food. Like never, wine. May you never go hungry. You know what I mean? Giving them something to basically let them know, I hope that you prosper in your home. Because if you prosper in your home, community will prosper. If you don't prosper in your home, guess what happens, right? You're not Gabrielle. We know this too well. What happened?
Yeah, we're becoming Pottersville, which was the
yeah, Pottersville. Yeah.
Pottersville was the bad dream that George Bailey had about how the town would have been had he not been there. It was all people renting, living in row houses, cemeteries, and lots of speakeasies and prostitution, and just people angry. Everybody was angry because they were just living on the edge, and that's what our society is becoming. And somehow we have to figure out how to turn it around and get more humanity back.
Yeah,
it's getting ugly.
Yeah, Pottersville, that's a nightmare. Pottersville. Because I think I'm going back again to the dream as a child. You dream to be a parent, you dream to be a mother, you dream to be a wife, you dream to have a home where you could welcome friends and family and have joy. Because again, in his own house, his wife was like, my dream is to have a home where I have children and I have family members come in for the holidays and really have a fun time. That's her dream, right? The wife, Mary, that was her dream. While he was building community, she wanted to build home, right? And that's, in essence, that's what we need to be as a society. That's why let's talk money. We say money encompasses everything. If we are Pottersville, guess what? We don't have what we need. But at the end of the day, as a believer, I do feel like as they're plotting against us, God is working for us. So what do you think? Like while Mr. Potter was plotting to destroy George, God was planning to show up for him because he became suicidal because of a situation that happened. Does anybody want to spoil the alert and let them know what happened? And and why do you think that he do you believe that? Like, I mean, not everybody's a believer like me. I do believe that while they're plotting, God is working on our behalf. This is not a religious show, but I'm a person of faith, so I feel very free to talk about my faith. So what about you? Since you haven't been on for a long time, Baba, do you feel like sometimes when they're plotting against your family, plotting against community, God is always working on our behalf?
Absolutely. And at the beginning of the movie, you see when God was talking to the angel was talking to the man, and he was talking about George since he was a boy.
Yeah.
So I do believe that.
You do believe that he knows you from the time you were a baby.
Exactly.
So he knew me from the time I was back home in Haiti. I do believe.
Yeah, God knows that you're gonna come here and then have a great show like Let's Talk Money with Ren, and then you will inviting people. We're gonna talk about everything that are gonna help our community, because what you are doing right now, for those people that are listening or watching us on Facebook and YouTube, people gonna learn from your show, and it's gonna help the community so much.
Yeah. Curtis, you remember like when he was in a desperate situation because he lost that lump sum of money? I don't know. I was trying to do the current value of $8,000 in 1946. I think it would be at least what, $800,000 today? I don't know. It's a large sum of money for 1986. And then of course, Mr. Potter and all the different Potters in the community were sending, the bank examiners after him all the time to create mayhem in his environment. So he lost that money. But you remember something that he had and he tried to negotiate it for a loan? As an insurance person, how did you feel about that? When I saw that, I was like, wow, not only was he a community man, but also cared enough about his family to protect himself. Did you feel the same way?
I definitely did. And just thinking about, I'm always watching movies, and I'll ask my wife, well, what is that in today's money? What you quickly could do is say, how much was it to buy a home or a car? A car would have been like $600, yours, right? At home, $2,000-$3,000, yours. Yeah. It's weird when you see those things in the paper, the mortgage, $18 or whatever. But yeah, you could have had a house free and clear and that home. So you could have 2-3 homes. So you want to talk about that in today's world, you could be a millionaire just off of that. So 8,000 is a lot of a lump sum of money. Yeah. And I appreciate you bringing, God into the equation in the conversation, because, this character, this person, James Stewart, and we talk about these characters, we didn't talk about the actors themselves yet, but he brought himself. Obviously, you're bringing yourself into the work. Right. In this world, right, around that same time, we had a baseball player that had to stop his career, Ted Williams, fight in the war and come back, because it was just like not even negotiable. Same thing with James Stewart. This is his first movie back. And so you look and see him in a scene, he's sitting there and the camera zooms in, director did such a good job. And you see them tears in his eyes. And he's like, God, if you're out there, please help. And so it's just a lot packed into that. You're acknowledging your Lord and Savior, you're acknowledging the higher power, but then just kind of uncertainty, right? If you're out there, I know you exist, but you might have left me alone to do my own thing. But if you're still there, please help me. So there was a lot that's going on in that uncertainty, still understanding that his circumstances needed something bigger than him. And yeah, you just, like I said, I just think that he probably was drawing from that PTSD because he was in those fighter jets, and not to go off course, but it was really tough. You see some things and you can't really react. You have to hold that in and just, continue, because those jets have to be on each other. They're like, see them flyovers when they're like 8-10 in a row or something like that. So he's part of that battalion. So just imagine some of the things that I bring a parallel to today, things that we had to see and just hush up, whether it's men, whether it's Black women, whatever. And you can't really expound upon it. Or you're going to see a therapist? What are you, crazy? You know what I'm saying? So those type of stigmas and things, so we suffer in silence. And that's the type of stuff that's going on. So I'm always watching these things. Maybe it's the in-home therapy me before I started doing the financial and the insurance, but these are the things that we're bringing to ourselves in these spaces,
Yeah. I don't miss anything. I'll watch a movie a few times just to get it, because as you were talking about the current event that was happening, I also noticed that at the very beginning, we didn't mention it, notice that the relationship between the Black servant that they had and the family. Now, I don't know if you guys remember, I did a show and I talked about this man, and the book was Here Forever. Here Forever. His name is John. What was his last name? I forgot. But the book is called Here Forever, and the book was talking about how this man was a great leader, was the CEO of PG, Procter & Gamble, but yet his life was very congruent. He wasn't the type of leader at the office. He was this great leader, and then at home he was a nasty husband, or with his children he was this. He was very whole. He lived a whole life. And when I saw Bailey, the senior, the father, and the way he treated the servant was a Black woman, 1946, she was a part of the family. Her interaction with the family was so seamless. I was like, you know what? This director, he knew what he was talking about. He wanted to send a message, and he was sending a message that will be classic and timeless. It has nothing to do, if you are an honest person, if you're a community person, if you're a kind person, It doesn't matter if the person is white, black, gay, straight, whatever, you're gonna treat them the same. And I thought that was my sister actually caught it too. My sister like, you know this, how the black woman in 1946, she was very much part of the family. And of course she was an employee, but
She's-
she was, uh-huh.
She wasn't afraid to kind of tease them and speak her mind.
Yeah.
And yeah.
There wasn't that power like you lesser than, you know,
Right.
it was like, yes, you're working for me, just like an employee-employer relationship. I can work for you, but you still treat me as a human being with respect. So
That's
yeah, we can go on and on about this movie. It's already 7:46. I just wanted to say, so going back again to the faith part, you know, saying like if you are there, have you ever experienced guardian angels? You guys, I know, Gabriel, you've gone through a lot in the recent years. Do you feel like as you were going through all those hardships, like you had a guardian angel? Do you believe that you had support that you couldn't see, perhaps? Because we don't all see guardian angel. But I kid you not, I thought I went to Seattle once and I wasn't feeling so well, probably in the same state of mind as George Bailey. Very depressed. Going back again to the scene that you mentioned, Barbara, when you said that they were talking to the angel, and Clarence, who was the guardian angel, came and said, "Okay, what's wrong with him? Is he sick?" And God said, "No, worse, he's discouraged." So meaning like discouragement, depression is actually worse than even cancer or sickness, because usually those don't kill you. It's the discouragement and the depression. So do you feel like you've had guardian angels helping you along the way in your life? Just like, yes, go ahead.
I think so. Sometimes I feel the presence of people who have passed.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm not totally sure, but I think so.
Yeah.
I think there are guardian angels here on earth, you know, people who kind of are there for you when you need them, and
I agree.
you know,
100%.
we can be guardian angels for each other.
Correct.
And
Definitely agree.
hopefully we have some up there too.
I know. What about you, Babo? I know one time you on the show, you said that you came here by yourself and you were all alone, needed help, and you felt like God sent you a woman who has become a surrogate mother to you. Do you feel like she's been your guardian angel?
Yeah, so till then, yeah. And sometimes I'm not gonna say it's not everybody can experience that, but you can feel the presence of somebody, or you can feel like somebody is talking to you. Yeah, that happened to me quite a while. Yeah, that happened to me sometimes.
So
Definitely.
while Mr. Porter was plotting, calling one newspaper.
If you don't mind, I can share an experience I had in April, and then I was about to make a very bad decision, and somebody came. I can't see the face, but I can feel the presence and I can hear the voice and say, you are about to make a very bad decision for your life. So it's not gonna be good for you. So don't do it. And I was like, because I was by myself. I was in Kansas, and then I was by myself in the house. And then I was like, oh, who's there? And then I was about to go about my business. And then I took my computer and I was starting searching and stuff like that. And I hear the same voice saying, what you're gonna do, it's not gonna be good for you, so stop. So I called my mom, I called my sister, and I stopped, and it's not gonna be good for me.
Yeah. We have Mr. Potter plotting, calling the police. He's calling the bank examiners. He's calling the newspaper. In today's world, they take people to courthouse to try to hang them for mortgages. They try to hang them for things and guess what? Just like Mr. Potter, they have all the money in their hands. He knew where that $8,000 was, and yet he was gonna crucify this man who had 4 children and a wife, a community man. So when they don't care about who you are, I do believe that God will send out the angels to really sustain you and hold you. Whether you lost a job or a sickness or difficulties finding a job, your credit's been messed up, gone into the gutter because a potter decided to destroy you like that. Yeah, Curtis, have you ever been there?
Absolutely.
I work
Actually,
with people and I've been there.
someone in the chat actually has mentioned something right along those lines. She says, Priscilla says, God never leaves his children, and he uses the unknown. So I think that's in support of what Barbara was sharing. And so, yeah, I mean, you mentioned a while back, has there ever been a situation that was kind of tough? You know, when you're going through that storm, you don't like it, but you look back and say, wow, I built resilience, and now I know I can do it, because you don't know until you're faced with it. No one really signs up for it. I don't know many people that say, yeah, you know what? I want my season of discomfort, you know, but it's just when you come out of that, you say, wow, I can actually do that.
Yeah.
That's different. Now you have a different sense, your head held high, chest out, and you can teach others as well, or at least you can showcase and show them that, yeah, hopefully it can be done. I can give you some tips with, if you want to mentor people and show people, now you're not just talking as an advisor, you can be a mentor. And there's a difference, because some people just talk to move the wind around, and others can say, hey, let me show you what happened to me. Your experience is going to be yours, but this is what I did, and you take from that what you will.
Yeah, lived experience. You have to have had lived experience, because just like you say, I have talked in the past when I was in my 20s to move the wind. Is that what you just said? Right. I was talking because I remember being at the church doing my class, God, Money, and You. And I was telling folks, all you need to do is plan. All you need to do is be more disciplined. But you know what I didn't know about, really, even when I was in my 20s or early 30s, I didn't know anything about, the real Mr. Potters that were out there looking for ways to destroy families, looking for ways to create obstacles, looking for ways to make sure that you will be homeless, jobless, creditless in so many ways. I didn't know about that. Of course, I was saying God, and I say have faith. But I know my processes all the time. We pray so hard, so we never need God. Our prayers are like, God, give me a job, give me this, give me that. So I never need you really for real. And the reason I said that, he's Bailey, George Bailey, he was a giver to the community, always giving to people, always going above and beyond to help, right? Sacrificing his own dream. But yet, when he got to the point where he needed help, just like I've been, I didn't think God would show up for me. I thought I could show up for other people all the time, but I didn't think God would show up for me, because you don't believe that God cares enough for you. But you care for other people. How is that? You notice how he was like always there for others, but then when it was his time, he lost his mind because he didn't think God would show up for him. But God was working on his behalf, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
God will show up for you.
Somebody sent you some stars, so I think they agree.
Yeah, God will show up for you. He's shown up for me. 2022 has been an awesome year. I know, like 10 years ago, I was where Mr. Bailey was. I was suicidal, and I said that because I had a financial crisis that I never expected. And because I never expected it, I didn't know how to handle it, because I was always the one helping people, taking care of people, doing this, signing the check. And then I found myself where I never expected before, because potters, those potters wanted to shame me. They were calling they were just like they called the police. They were calling the newspaper, dragging you to court, trying to shame you, to let you know that you're no good. They tried to do that, but God. So what is your wish for 2024? I've been working on my agenda for 2024.
For vision?
Yeah, your vision for 2024. What would you like to say to someone right now who's in a funk? It was good to have been afflicted. Now we can have empathy. So yeah, what would you say to somebody who's in a funk right now, who's going through a situation and they don't see the end? The new year is happening, and I know this time of the year, I was talking to someone last week, and she said, oh, I just got news. My friend committed suicide. So what would you say to someone who's where Mr. Bailey, where I've been, and perhaps other people who are watching Ben, and they are losing hope? What would be your wish for 2024 for them? Whether it's health, wealth, family, community, you name it. What do you think, Barbara?
If somebody is in a situation that they want to commit suicide, it's or other mental health issue, first of all, it's take care of yourself.
Correct.
And then second of all, God has a plan for you, because the same way he has a plan for George when he was a little boy, he got a plan for everybody. And I believe.
Yeah. You gotta hold on to faith and find
Yeah,
community, right? His wife and
absolutely.
everybody else at the very beginning of the movie, they're all praying, Lord, please save George, please save. Their prayers went up and the angel came down. Yeah.
And
I,
I think this is something that we also have to encourage in our community. When somebody say, "Oh, I don't feel good, I'm depressed," don't laugh at that person. Don't
yeah,
make fun at the person, because it's a real, it's
yeah,
a real thing.
yeah.
So instead of laughing at "Oh no, I don't think you're depressed. I think so you're not in the person body, you're not in the person mind, so you don't know what is going on inside of this person mind. So you have to encourage the person to talk to somebody, to
Correct.
seek for a treatment and stuff like that, instead of making fun.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so seek professional help. But Gabriel, I
Absolutely.
met you in the community. I met you in serving community because as I was going to the valley of the shadow of death, Psalms 23, for those of you who don't know the word. Yeah, I was going to the valley of the shadow of death. I was fearing, but I'm not supposed to fear. Yet I came out and started serving and helping. The classes I did not too long ago, this young lady came on the show. She was saying like how I helped her. I don't even remember helping her because I was helping everybody. But she said, you sat with me and helped me, Gabrielle. And I remember when the time she mentioned was the time where I was in the deepest stress. Do you think that coming out, be part of the community, because George got helped by community? Do you think it's important to come out and be part of a community so that you can feel empowered and encouraged and not be all alone? Of course, get professional help, but also get community help. Gabrielle, yeah. I met you in community. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in a crisis point since the pandemic. A lot more people are depressed, they're isolated, they don't feel like they're part of a community. And so, I mean, I think having faith is one piece of the pie, but I think our society is very broken. I think somehow we have to come up with some new creative ways to solve these problems. You know, they're not individual problems. Like George Bailey thought he was the only one who was miserable, but he wasn't. It's so widespread, and we're all struggling just to pay our bills and stay afloat. And somehow we have to rethink the way the whole system is set up, and be more and more, have more spirituality and have more community and, you know, support for people. People need more support.
Is that usually your prescription, Curtis? Support, you know, like professional if you need it, but spiritual, community. And what else do you offer to those who are going through, especially when it comes to money, a financial hardship like Mr. Bailey, a loss?
You know, I mentioned that my practice is built on trauma-informed financial literacy. So before I even get to the wellness of the finances, you know, I start talking about how psychoeducation works, how the brain works, and we're dealing with a lot of trauma. Some of it predates us. And so when Gabrielle talks about isolation, I know that thing has set us back. I don't know, it's probably insurmountable, innumerable ways. So my ways to try to offset that and defray some of those impacts is to run community groups. You know, I have, whether it's a cooking class, you know, that's just an excuse for us to get together because, you know, folks we just talked about soul food. They got together at Big Mama's house for food. You know, we have the financial literacy class. We also have our, you know, just our wellness group, the SOS group, because SOS used to mean stress. We call it Sanctuary of Serenity. So there's things like that we're doing on site, right? You know, so it's not always about money, it's about community and getting together and finding your tribe. I make sure my finances are in order so that I could fly earlier, 2 months ago to Louisiana to go be with my tribe. A lot of financial professionals, and then also in San Francisco, because it's nothing like communities, nothing like hugs. If you think it's just, talk, you look at some of the research, it lowers stress, right?
Mhm.
You can bring your cortisol levels down and things of that nature. So hugs, I can't give you guys, I gave my sister there a heart, earlier when she was speaking. Man, thank you, Gabrielle, for the cyber hug. But, there's nothing like a real hug from people. And so,
Right.
that's huge. You can't hug everybody because you don't want everybody's spirits flattening on you. But,
Uh-huh.
when you can, that's another sidebar conversation. But yeah, the fact that, even if it isn't a hug, just sharing the same room and the same space with people, the energy is palpable. You can
Yeah.
feel it. And one thing that Corona did is had us in silos, suffering in silence. So when that depression kicked in that Barb was talking about, you had nothing but the walls to look at. You didn't have anyone that could, give you a hug, no judgment, just be with you, or maybe share with you who might be able to help. Right.
Correct.
Let me add just a little bit of something on what he said regarding the hug. I'm a nurse, and there's a patient. He was verbally abusive to staff and stuff like that. And I read somewhere that when you give somebody a hug, and that can calm the person down. And I asked him, please allow me to give you a hug. And he looked at me like that, and he said, yes. And I hugged him so tight, and he was calm for 2 hours.
Wow.
2 hours. Yeah.
It makes a difference.
It is so important. So
Yeah.
that's why sometimes we encourage people to hug your husband, your kids, your friend, and stuff like that when they are going through a tough time.
Thank you for sharing that. That's huge. I'm taking that with me.
Yeah, take that and hug Gabrielle. When you come back from New York, I want to give you a hug. Thank you so much, Curtis. I'll send you a virtual hug. Tell your children to hug you for me. And Babo, I know you're out of state. Thank you so much for taking the time from work.
Okay.
When you come to Boston, definitely I'll give you a hug.
Oh, I need that.
I love this show, Let's Talk Money with Friends, because it's a labor of love. But just like you, Barbara, I heard it. Do something like this, and it will change lives. Oh, go ahead, Gabrielle.
Say one more thing. I think one thing in the movie that it showed that friends may be more important than money sometimes, because the friends came and bailed out George Bailey at the end. They gave him the money he needed to.
Yeah, you're right. Friends, community. Let's talk money with friends, not just strangers. Yeah, friends,
adding one more thing, I want to say, it's easy to minimize or kind of trivialize the impact that we have on people and what we bring to their lives, because he didn't know until obviously people were, hey, look what would happen if you weren't here. So just, think about the things that we're bringing to other people's lives. Absolutely. And the impact we're having.
And that's why home is important, because when his wife was saying, like, we're getting ready for a little gathering, holiday gathering, I don't want anybody because he was going to stress. But when he realized how much loved, how much he was loved, the place was so tight. So many folks were around. He didn't care because the community came out to support him. So yeah, I do Let's Talk Money with Friends because I care about community and I care about people. I've cared about people all my life. This is not something that I'm coming up with. This is not like a new strategy that I'm coming up with. I could do this. I'm doing it for free. I could do this with my eyes closed, because every single day I wake up, when I go for my long walk, I'm thinking of ways to build community and to impact community. So yeah, if you are watching tonight, it's almost 2024, the last week, the last Wednesday of the year, and you wonder, when do I have a purpose? Yes, it's a wonderful life. You matter. My word that I believe in Jeremiah 29:11 says that I have a plan for you. And the plan is to prosper you and not harm you, to give you hope and a future. But guess what? You will walk through the valley of the shadow of death. You will go through depression. You will go through hardships. I know we don't want it, Gabrielle. You will go through that. But guess what? When you come out of it, you would say, just like I've said, it was good for me to have been afflicted because I've learned your statutes. The statute that I've learned is to love more, love people more, have more empathy, understand people even more, and be more forgiving when wrong is being done to me, because at the end of the day, I've been forgiven and I'm willing to do the same. So my wish for you for 2024, let me see, I had the list here: health, wealth, community, spirituality, Oh, goodness, love. Did I say love? Love, love, love. Because love never fails. Right, ladies and gentlemen?
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you so much for your time. Please.
Thank you, Gabrielle.
Thank you, honey. Tag, share, make a comment, let people know
Happy
that
New
we are here
Year.
every Wednesday. And have a good year. You see, I
Bye.
came ready to celebrate. Celebrate the new year. It doesn't matter what you're going through. God
Mhm.
is in control. You just have to
Absolutely.
find people to support you. If it's not a wife, if it's the community, just like watch the movie. It's a wonderful life. You matter to me and to all of us here. God bless you. Have a good night. See you
Bye.
next year. 2024 is going to be the best year